Now let's talk about the 5 key modalities of how we as human beings make sense of the world around us. Now the reason this is so important is that these 5 modalities are the essential building blocks of how I'm going to teach you to manage your state at the highest possible level. Now again, let's cut to the live footage just for a minute here so I can give you the basics and I'll elaborate on them afterwards. We have 5 senses. Here's how we make sense of the world. Very simple. Okay, we have visual, auditory, visual, what we see, auditory, what we hear, kinesthetic, what we feel. We have gustatory, what we taste. Okay, and we have olfactory, what we smell. 5 senses. Visual, auditory, kinesthetic, gustatory, olfactory, smell. Now we have these in 2 ways. We have visual, what we see. I see you, that's visual. Also, I close my eyes and I visualize what I've already seen or can simply make up my own pictures. Everyone get that? So you have visual in the real world and visual remembered. Different types of modalities. I have auditory, I hear myself speaking, I can hear you speaking to me, and also I can close my eyes, I have an internal dialogue. I have an own internal dialogue, I hear myself speaking. As if you read my books, I got 3 or 4 dialogues going at any given time, right? Who has internal dialogue? Raise your hand if you have of course you do, right? Or you could simply remember something that someone said to you. You can remember the words and hear them in your mind's eye, your mind's ear, right? So you have visual, auditory, remembered, and in the world. Kinesthetic, what I feel. I pick up this, I feel the chair, I feel my arm, or I get a gut feeling inside. Same, right? Visual in the world, visual what I feel. I remember a feeling I once had. Very important for this, right? Okay? And then you have gustatory, which of course is important now. You have gustatory, which is taste. And that doesn't just, doesn't come into play that often in the world, unless you're a chef. What you taste doesn't really, for eating it's important, but day to day it doesn't really impact you that much. And then, of course, olfactory, which is what you smell. And if you're a human being, typically you're a visual or auditory dominant, and some people are kinesthetic, they're feeling people. This is how humans, we use VAK, visual, auditory, kinesthetic. Olfactory is great if you're a Labrador Retriever or a Beagle, okay? But of course, smell, and here's the interesting part, smell is the most powerful of all your senses. In terms of who's ever had this? You smell like one molecule of a smell can bring you back to your grandmother's room or a room. You can walk in somewhere and smell, oh my God, and you're like, in that instant, you're like, oh my God, it's a rush. Who's ever had that? Right? It's very powerful, olfactory. Great, you're back. Now, again, everyone actually has a dominant modality. Some people, in fact, actually have 2 modalities that are dominant. Personally, I'm very strong in the visual department. I make very clear pictures in my head, and I tend to almost think in pictures. Now, typically, people who are visually oriented, they move their hands a lot. As you see, I move my hands a lot, right? And they use phrases like, I see what you're saying, or let me see how I feel, and I'll get back to you. They basically describe the world around them in visual terms. And they're usually quick talkers because what they're doing is they're narrating the pictures that are flying through their brains, almost like they can't keep up with their own thoughts. That's a visual. Then you have actually number 2, which is people who process the world mostly through what they hear. They're called auditory dominance. And by the way, even though my visual modality is very, very strong, I'm also very strong as an auditory person. Essentially, I rely on both of those to make sense of the world around me. I have very powerful internal dialogue, and I also listen very closely to what other people are saying, and I process it constantly. So I'm both visual and I'm auditory. Then you have some people who are actually kinesthetics, the so-called feelers, okay? And they process the world by how they feel. And it's a funny story because I'm actually in a relationship with a woman who's a feeler. And just imagine, someone like me who's a talker, right? The visual talker. I'm moving my hands. I see this, I see that. And she's like, I feel this, I feel like. Sometimes we have a talk and it's like we're not actually understanding each other and we're saying the same thing. She'll say like, I met this person, I bounced my radar off. I'm like, oh my God, she bounced her radar. What she's really saying is that, what I'm saying is, I saw that person and I got this, sense by looking at them, the body language and what they said. She calls it her radar. So just understand why this is so important, because when you're in a situation of influence and let's say you're a visual and you're trying to influence a feeler, okay, remember to slow yourself down, to start talking more in feeling terms, right? Like I feel this way, and you lower your voice a bit less hand gestures. It's very important that when you're looking to get into rapport with someone, that you try to figure out very quickly what is their dominant modality. Are they a visual? Are they an auditory? Are they kinesthetic? And usually, you'll find a lot of visuals out there, and you also find a lot of feelers as well. But know which one you're dealing with and almost try to, skew your own communication style to match them. And if you do that, you'll find yourself falling into an unconscious rapport with this person at a very, very deep level.